No doubt about it, life is tough. We often have to sacrifice for the things that we love. Food, shelter, relationships, all important, but worth giving up for comic books. Hi, I'm Keston. This is my true life story from 1987. I was 11 years old, about ready to turn 12. The number one song in the US was Walk Like an Egyptian. I was often wearing parachute pants, and my shoes were Nike Air Maxes. In fact, that was the first year that the Air Maxes came out. Sometimes the moments that shape our life are big and dramatic. Other times are a lot more subtle, and that's the way my comic book story begins. I was 11 years old, and I biked up to the local convenience store. I went in there and I grabbed a few gumballs. They cost 2 cents a piece, and I think I also got a Coke. And I was about ready to check out when in the corner of my eye, I saw something. It was a comic book rack, and specifically, I saw an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. I went over there, opened it up, thumbed through it, and it looked pretty cool. And then I looked at the price tag, 75 cents. Well, today 75 cents doesn't sound like too much, but as a kid, that was a lot of money. At the time, my total net savings was about $20. I had some money left over from Christmas, and every time I mowed the lawn, I got $2. So I thought to myself, should I spend that 75 cents out of my 20 bucks? That represented about 4% of my life savings. Of course, I bought the book. I took it home and I read it over and over and over again. I loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the story. I loved the art. The next week, I went back to the convenience store. Instead of buying one book, I bought two. I bought a copy of Transformers and a copy of G.I.Joe. Took them home, read them over and over again, loved them too. And this pattern continued week after week. But instead of two books, I went up to 3 to 4 to 5. And my life savings of 20 bucks depleted each week. After a couple months, you know what happened. I was dead broke. Didn't have a penny to my name because of all these expenditures in comic books. I lived beyond my means. Was it time to stop collecting? No, hell no. I had to figure out a way to get more comic books. Think, Keston, think. You've got to innovate. And then the thought dawned on me. Maybe there was money lying around the house that I could take to pay for comic books. And no, I'm not talking about stealing from a mom or stealing from my sister. I'm talking about the money that just might be lying around someplace that nobody notices. So then I began my scavenging. I went to every room, every sofa, every chair, lifted up the cushion to see what I could find. I also went downstairs, looked under the washing machine, looked all around the floor. There was change there too. This was actually pretty successful. It was probably $15 or $20 worth of change that I was able to come up with. And then I started spending that money week after week. And maybe a month or a month and a half later, I was in the same position. And the well went dry. I couldn't pick the couch anymore because all that money was now gone. So now what was I going to do? Maybe this was a sign that I couldn't collect any comic books anymore. And then it occurred to me, I did have one other stream of money. But up until this time, I had partitioned it off in my head. This is money that I shouldn't spend on anything else than what it was designed to do. It was the $5 a week that I got for lunch money. My mom would give it to me on Monday, and $1 each day was spent on lunch. And I thought carefully about this. Well, lunch is pretty important. On the other hand, I did have breakfast and dinner. What was one meal compared to amazing comic books? So I tried this strategy out. I would go to lunch, sit with friends, but wouldn't eat anything. And then after each week, I'd accumulate $5, and it was awesome. That was just about the amount of money that I was spending on comic books each week. About week 2 or week 3, my teacher came up to my lunch table. There I was with all my buddies. They were just feasting away, either with the school lunch or maybe they brought their brown bag lunch. And there I was eating nothing. And she said, "Hey, Keston, would you mind coming over with me?" I said, "Sure." So I went over to Miss Dowdy and she talked and she said, "Keston, I've been noticing the last few days that you haven't eaten anything for lunch. Is everything okay?" And I assured her everything was fine. I said, "You know what, Miss Dowdy, I'm saving up for something important, so no worries at all." I went home that day, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, my teacher and my mom had a conversation. And my mom sat me down and she said, "Keston, lunch is important, and that dollar that I'm giving you every day, or the $5 per week, that is for lunch. You can't use it to buy comic books." All right, now the gig was finally up. I had no way out. My mom knew what I was doing. My teacher knew what I was doing. And I had no other way of getting money. I did continue collecting for the next 5 or 6 years, but at a much slower pace, a pace consistent with how much money I had coming in through gifts or chores. Sadly, by the end of high school, I stopped collecting. But that's okay. I came back with a vengeance 20 years later, but that's a story for another time. Hey, before you go though, I have a question for you. Have you ever sacrificed something for a comic book that you love so much? If so, please let me know in the chat box. And if you like this content, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and hope to see you around real soon.